Timo Meier, has he been worth all the hype? And has it gotten to a point where he might need to be punished just a little bit more? And also, let's talk about how the Devils have been running their practice as of late, because Lindy Ruff is not all that thrilled. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Okay, so we know that the Devils lost a bit of a stinker in their previous matchup against the Florida Panthers, and unfortunately, it's going to be a couple more days until they're able to redeem themselves, because the next time the Devils take the sheet of ice will be Friday when they play against the New York Islanders. But I still got some good coverage for you the next few days on Locked On Devils, so keep an ear out for that. But in today's episode, we're going to talk about the Devils being pushed in practice, and we're going to hear from some of the players as to what the struggles have been like from their perspective. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about a main talking point that's been brought up on Devils discourse, which is the possibility of Timo Meier being benched even further for the Devils. So I think people are trying to push for him to be a healthy scratch. Ryan Novozinski put out a fantastic article once again for NJ.com. And then to round it all off, in the third and final segment, we're going to talk about some of the defensive changes that the Devils can make, because it's been so bad the last few games that people are pushing for the Devils to trade back for Damon Severson and Ryan Graves. And I know it's all jokes, it's all for giggles and such, but still, I think there's some truth to it, meaning that the discourse has not been satisfied with the overall execution for the Devils blue line, particularly probably with Brendan Smith. So let's talk about the Devils' more recent practice. So Amanda Stein put out a very interesting video on the X app, and it sort of went viral, which was the Devils doing suicides at their more recent practice. And apparently one of the main words that Lindy Ruff was using was the word again. Basically, we're doing this again. We're doing this again. We're doing this again. Because Lindy Ruff, in his post-game interview press conference with the media, you could tell he was not the happiest of campers. He was not happy with how his team had been playing the last few games, and he knows they could play a lot better. And quite honestly, I think the players know that they could play a lot better. So Lindy Ruff is trying to get his message across. And one thing that I actually commended Ruff for doing in the previous matchup against the Panthers was that he was able to make some adjustments on the fly, and he wasn't afraid to make some tough decisions, which included benching Timo Meier in period 3. Curtis Lazar also acknowledged that one of the reasons why he might have been benched was for the Devils to get more offense, and it worked for them in period 3 because the Devils scored 3 unanswered goals. John Marino was also benched, and we saw at the beginning of period number 2, Ruff was switching up the lines to see what could be a spark plug for the team. So I like that Ruff is holding his players accountable, not pulling any punches, and he's just trying to get a message across. So I actually kind of like that. And like I said, when Amanda Stein put that out on the X app, it just basically caught a whirlwind, and a lot of people were interacting with it. So basically gives you a look into how the practice might be for the next few days for the Devils. Now, the season has not gone all that well. It could be a lot worse, but it could be a lot better at the same time, because the Devils currently have a record of 1-1-1, and they've dropped their last 2 matchups, first against the Arizona Coyotes, and obviously their more recent one against the Panthers in regulation. So the Devils have 3 points to start the year, but all 3 games wasn't their best showing of hockey, because I said in the previous episode, against the Red Wings, Devils were just outskated. Then against the Coyotes, it was just sloppy. There were penalties left and right, particularly in period number 2. And then in the game against the Panthers, Devils got off to a very slow start. They picked it up a little bit in period 2, but period 3 was really when they started to play their brand of hockey. So at the conclusion of the practice, some players spoke on their opinions as to how the season has been going so far for the Devils. One of those players was Brendan Smith. So I'm going to play you guys a couple of those sound bites. And the one thing I could say for Smith, regardless of what you think about him as a hockey player, the one thing you cannot debate is that he is very knowledgeable in the sport and he's a great leader. So here's what Smith had to say in regards to what the struggles might be for the Devils to open up the season.
Smitty, we've talked so much about starts, not only in games, but to start the season. You know, you talk about how important those points are. Where do you feel sort of everybody is right now, given the way things have started?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to gel and figure out how to be a better team. And obviously we had a good practice today, so that's something that we're going to kind of have emphasis about. But I think one of the big things that I see watching the game after is that early on we got to get into our forecheck a little bit better, and that kind of comes with our feet. So if we're skating and buzzing around and getting on the opposition, I think that will help us out a lot more, and then we can kind of make plays from in the O-zone. So I think we talked about a lot of things today, and just try to get faster in our breakouts and then faster on our forecheck, and I think that will help us out.
So two things I want to highlight is that he said the forecheck, in order for them to create more offensive possession. I agree with him wholeheartedly because it's something that I've been talking about the last couple episodes, which is when the Devils have offensive possession, they just seem like they're stuck in muck. It just doesn't seem like this is the same Devils team from last year. And if you guys recall, in round 2 against the Carolina Hurricanes, one of the reasons why the Devils struggled was because the Hurricanes were basically gobbling them up in neutral ice. Basically, they were forechecking the hell out of the Devils, which basically forced the Devils to commit a lot of icings. And as a result, the Devils had tired legs. And this is what the Devils need to do as well, which is they need to work on their forecheck so that way they can keep those offensive possessions alive, or at least get it going in some sort of way. So I liked what Smith said right there. He broke it down, which was Devils just need to get a little bit more aggressive. I think that's the common denominator between what I've been saying and what Smith has been saying, and I think a lot of you have been saying as well, which is just the eye test doesn't meet it for us, which is the Devils are just not playing with the same sense of urgency that we saw last season. Hell, they're not playing with the same sense of urgency that they showcased during preseason. It seems like it's a completely different team. So I agree with Smith wholeheartedly in that regards. And then Smith also talked about like what the Devils need to work on so that way they can get off to a good start, but also have a good finish. Here were his thoughts.
What can prevent a team from being able to do that, particularly in the start of a game?
Just being connected. I think for us, we're like a unit of 5 out there, and when we're tight and close, I think that we're very hard to play against. And sometimes it can just take one guy that's just a little too not, I won't want to say too slow, but is just not doing the right thing at the right moment, and kind of puts that whole 5 at risk sometimes. So we're, like I said, we try to be a unit of 5 in all 3 zones. Obviously, our forecheck is something that I've been talking about right now, and if we can do that a little bit better, and then in the D zone, when we're a unit of 5, we break out pucks quick. So it's an area that we're talking about, and I think it's going to help us out with games coming forward.
So it's interesting that he talked about how one person can basically hinder the offensive execution for the Devils, because he might be well aware that he could be one of those players that's hindering the overall offensive execution. Now, I get that prior to the game against the Panthers, and the Corsi for percentage actually shows it, Smith has actually been somewhat solid. That's why he's been in the lineup the last few games. And look, I'm just going strictly off the numbers. This is not my opinion, so do not come at me in the comment section. So that's all I'm going to say. But anyway, I think in regards to what Smith has been saying, it's like they have a cast, but can they put on a movie? That's a analogy that I like to use, which is the Devils have a lot of good pieces. They have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but it's just that cohesiveness. They got to bring it together. And I think that's what's missing so far. Now, Jesper Bratt also spoke to the media, and he shared his thoughts as to what Lindy Ruff might do in terms of splitting up the lines, and could that help the team going forward? Here are his thoughts.
Top 2 lines, the centerman switch. You know, you've had a lot of chemistry with Jack, but sometimes how important is it to maybe split up pairs that are working for the overall benefit of the team to maybe start to get other guys going a bit?
Oh, I feel like I've had both good chemistry with both of them. I feel like I've played almost as much with Nico as I've done with Jack, and I mean, sometimes just splitting up the lines a little bit can give a lot of energy to the team, and I don't know, like I feel like we're at the position right now where it doesn't hurt to switch something up and see if something else works. So we're excited.
Now, I said it in the previous episode, and this might be somewhat controversial because obviously when you have Tyler Toffoli, Jack Hughes, and Jesper Bratt, Bratt and Hughes are the only two players that are really putting up some offensive consistency for the Devils, and also Dougie Hamilton in a sense. And why am I not listing Tyler Toffoli? Well, the numbers are showing that Toffoli has a lot of good chances, but he's not really capitalizing on them. So I get that Toffoli has a couple of assists. I get that he's helping Hughes a lot, but Toffoli's also missing on some of his opportunities. So my thing is, like, you got to split up that line. I know Toffoli, Hughes, and Bratt have good chemistry with one another. We saw it on full display during preseason, but I agree with Jesper Bratt, which is you got to break up the lines to just change something. And Bratt even said that can sort of bring some new energy to the roster, which is desperately needed because the Devils need something. They just need to change their execution in some manner or another. And right now, it's just not going to cut it for them because you can't just have Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt carrying the team offensively alongside with Dougie Hamilton. That's a recipe for disaster because one of the reasons why the Devils were so successful last season was because they had a lot of depth pieces, and you need to get your depth pieces involved. So split it up a little bit because we can see Timo Meier possibly play on the third line. Maybe we can reunite Dawson Mercer, Nico Hischier, and also replacing Tomas Tatar, maybe Tyler Toffoli, because that's what I predicted over the summer. But I do agree with Bratt. I do expect some changes to the lineup for the Devils in their next matchup against the Islanders. So we're going to talk about Timo Meier and my assessment as to how his tenure has been so far for the Devils, not only this season, but last season. But before we continue, I want you guys to make some extra money. So I'm going to send you over to FanDuel because the Taylor Swift League is in full action. So snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over and unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Visit FanDuel.com, and why don't you bet on some of the Devils' money lines, props, etc. But please remember to do so responsibly. Okay, so let's talk about Timo Meier. So similar to what I said in the first segment, Ryan Ovazinski of NJ.com, he's a friend of the show. He put out another great article basically analyzing Timo Meier and what's been going on for him. So as you guys know, and I talked about it in segment 1 as well, Meier was benched in period 3 because let's face it, that game against the Panthers, that's just not going to cut it because Meier got a couple of penalties that really hurt the Devils in more ways than one. He wasn't really all that effective. And it seems like Meier is like having an existential crisis in terms of like, what role does he want with this team? Because it seems like he's still trying to figure it out. And I know Tom Fitzgerald talks about patience, but Novo put into the light about how the numbers have been looking so far for Meier if we look at this season, last season, and also during the playoffs. So after the game, Meier was quoted to say, "I knew what happened. Me and Lindy talked. So I think we both have the same view. Shh, happens. Sun came up again this morning. It's a new day. You just try to go out there and work as hard as you can. What's in the past is in the past. Look forward and do the best that you can." Now, Novo also added some interesting stats. So in 3 games since he inked his 8-year deal this summer, Meier actually has a 32.27% expected goals percentage and a 32.49% Corsi rating. And fun fact for you, that's a team low in both advanced metrics. So the thing is like Timo Meier and his productivity, it's hit or miss with some of the Devils fans because on the one hand, you got some fans saying like he's bringing more physicality, he's bringing more grip. On the other hand, people are saying like he was supposed to be like a bona fide 40-goal scorer like we saw with the San Jose Sharks. What's happening? If you want to read Ryan's thoughts on the matter, I will leave a link in the description to his article. I highly suggest giving a look. But Bill Spalding, who's the play-by-play announcer for the Devils, obviously, he actually put something interesting out on the X app. He said, Dano mentioned it on the broadcast last night, but Timo has historically taken his time to get going. So last season, first 9 games, 0 goals, 2 assists. The 2021 COVID 56-game season, first 10 games, 1 goal, 4 assists. Then during the 2019-2020 season, first 15 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. In those seasons, once he got going in November, he really never stopped. So my thing for Meier, and this is similar to what I alluded to in yesterday's episode, which is some players are just bound to get off to slow starts. You're not going to see like every single player pick up right where they left off last season. That doesn't really happen. It takes a minute for players to get into a groove. And Bill and Dano, while acknowledging that Meier has been struggling on air and also the offensive execution hasn't been there in general for the Devils, they're at least being fair and saying like, look, some players just get off the slow starts, and Timo just happens to be one of those players. Now, the thing is that it's not good enough for the Devils discourse, because I saw the comments in the latest episode, and basically a lot of people just aren't really high on Meier anymore, because I saw one comment, and I don't want to call out any of my audience members, saying that Meier should be traded for a 3rd-round pick at this point. I'm just like, can we pump the brakes on that a little bit? That would be very idiotic for Tom Fitzgerald to do. Like, I know Meier has his moments, and I know that some people are expecting certain things from him, but seriously, trading him for a 3rd-round draft pick, what have we come to? Like, are you really that frustrated with Meier? Are you that fed up to the point where you're willing to just give away a great talent like Meier for a 3rd-round pick that won't even matter for the Devils for the most part? So that's my thing. And some people, like I said, on Devils Discourse have been pushing for Meier to continue to be benched, maybe to the point where he's a healthy scratch. So let me give you guys a different perspective, courtesy of Josh Reintz of the Hockey Writers. He said over the summer, there's a perception that Meier struggled scoring post-trade. In fact, he tied with Haula for the lead in goals over the last 21 games with 9. So once again, I know stats tell one thing or another, and I know a lot of people say that stats don't lie, but in this case, I want to manipulate the stats a little bit more, because I had Johnny Lazarus on my show just last month, and he's a Rangers fan, and he covers them religiously for obviously Bleacher Report and NHL.com, but he also put into light during the Rangers and Devils series that despite Meier not putting up a single point, he was still very effective. And I think Josh put a good spin on things, basically saying like Meier was one of the Devils' top scorers towards the end of the regular season. Now, I'm sure Meier would like to have more goals, and I think that's why we look at the Corsi for percentage, because he's creating those good looks for himself, and we saw that on full display during the playoffs, which he was creating those good looks for not only himself but others, but wasn't really capitalizing. I think he would like those numbers to be higher, but I still think he was very solid for the Devils. Now, the thing is like, should he be benched? The answer is no, because the thing is, I think this Devils team is a lot better with Meier on the roster. But the thing is that they just got to try to figure out how to incorporate him more comfortably. And I know it's not really all on his wrongdoing. He's just doing what Lindy is telling him to do. But it's something that he's got to figure out himself as well, because it just seems like at times he's a little uncomfortable. At times it feels like he didn't even lace up a skate during the summer. And I know it's early, and I know a lot can still happen, but I think for Meier, he's going to get it going at one point or another. Historically, he just gets off to slow starts, but like Bill Spalding said, once he gets going, there's no stopping him. So my thing is like, you got to know what his role is on this team. So if you're expecting for him to be like a 40-goal scorer or something like that, that's great and all, but remember, the Devils already have a bona fide goal getter, and that's Jack Hughes, that's Nico Hischier, that's Jesper Bratt, who, in my personal opinion, when it comes to offensive execution, they're a little higher compared to Timo Meier. So my thing is like, can Meier become a 40-goal scorer once again? Yeah, absolutely, it's possible, but it's one of the reasons why in my Bold Takes episode, I said I don't foresee it happening, because I think his role is going to be a little bit different. Because one of the issues that a lot of fans had for the Devils last season was that first half of the year, the Devils were too soft. But then you get Meier, and it seems like Meier is generating a lot more hits. He's being more physical. He's playing in front of the net. He's being a bully down there. And that was on full display to close out the regular season and also the playoffs. So my thing is simply this. Meier is a good player, and the Devils are better with him. Let's not get that twisted, and let's not start this push saying that Tom Fitzgerald should trade Timo Meier for a third-round draft pick. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. He's here for the next 8 or so seasons, so get used to it. As you guys know, I'm a big Timo Meier guy. For what he's been given, I think he's been decent, and obviously this season he's off to a slow start, but a lot of players are off to slow starts, not only just on the Devils, but in the NHL in general. So it'll take time. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's not jump the gun or anything. Let's just take a few steps backwards and know that Timo is a good player. And I think once he starts to figure out his role with the team, I think he'll be a lot better. Now, before we talk about some of the defensemen for the Devils, I first want to tell you guys about AG1. It's a product that I use literally every day. I take it before I go to the gym, before I work out. So AG1 is a daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. And like I said, I drink it every day. I gave AG1 a try because I want to be happier. I want to be healthier. Buy as a temple, got to start treating as such. So AG1 is a foundational nutrient supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. AG1 replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple drinkable habit. Science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. AG1 helps you build your health foundation first. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. And now, I know a lot of you want to see the Devils up close and personal, and you might want to find some cheap tickets. So let me tell you about Game Time. So last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find, and buy a ticket for every kind of event in your area. Views from all seats in the venue, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. So you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last minute seats. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, so like I said, the Devils have been off to a pretty slow start, and the record doesn't really do it justice, but at least it's not as bad as it could have been. So one of the main talking points is the overall defensive execution for the Devils, and I talked about it in the previous episode, which is we saw some defensive lapses both by Hamilton and Siegenthaler, with Sam Reinhart slipping right between them, getting the tip-in goal, or Brendan Smith whiffing at the puck, and then Carter Verhaeghe was able to pounce on it and get the backhander attempt. Basically, a lot of people are frustrated with the Devils defensemen, and it's gotten to a point where people are saying, like, bring back Damon Severson and also Ryan Graves, and I'm no exception to it, but I do it in a joking manner, so I don't know who's actually serious about it. But according to Daniel Omia, I once again, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. If I'm mispronouncing it, please someone call me out. He's a writer for the Hockey Writers covering the Devils. He put this out on the X app. He said, seen a lot of Devils discourse regarding the blue line. Yes, it's early, but Ryan Graves leads the league in defensive zone giveaways. And Damon Severson got benched last night after a turnover led to a goal because the Columbus Blue Jackets were taking on the Detroit Red Wings. And unfortunately, we've seen this story pan out before. Severson makes a boneheaded play, and I don't think he recorded a single shift in period 3 because I tuned into that game just to give it a look-see. And yeah, that was pretty bad. But anyway, a lot of people are critiquing the Devils' defense, and I get it. Similar to a lot of players, they're off to a slow start with the exception of Jonas Siegenthaler because he has 3 points in 3 game appearances, and Dougie Hamilton, he's also been putting up a decent amount of points, but I think people are looking for the offensive firepower from Kevin Ball and John Marino because we saw a little bit of it take place during preseason, and people are a little ticked off with Brandon Smith. So here's my thing on the defensive execution. The Devils have 2 left-handed defensemen on their third line pairing, with it being Brandon Smith and Luke Hughes. The one thing I got to say is that move Luke Hughes to the left-handed defensive spot and then put in Colin Miller. I know he struggled, but I think Miller deserves a chance because I was big on Colin Miller signing with the Devils during the offseason because I said, like, despite him sometimes being a healthy scratch for the Dallas Stars, he was still up there in defensive point shares, blocks, hits, all those things, plus minus. So I was just like, okay, Colin Miller, that could be an under the radar signing. I think for Miller, you need to give him a chance because I know he struggled in preseason. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But at the same time, he just needs to be given an opportunity during the regular season. So that's my thing. I wasn't really a big fan of Brendan Smith and Luke Hughes, both being left-handed and playing on the third line defensive pairing. Maybe that's not a big deal to some people, but for me, I'm just like, can we put Luke Hughes at left-handed defenseman and then put in a right-handed defenseman? Just a suggestion. And then for Kevin Ball, guys, as long as he's inserting himself defensively, I don't really care about the offensive production. I think his skating is just fine. John Marino, same way. So my thing is, similar to a lot of players on the Devils roster, the defense will improve. And let's not like over romanticize Graves and also Severson, because were they both valuable players while they were playing for the Devils? Yes. And I know it's early, but at the same time, they had their flaws, and I think their services can be replaced. And it's going to take some time because the Devils had a system working for them the past couple seasons. So that's my thing. The defense, similar to the offense, will improve. And I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, what do you think about some of the stuff that Brendan Smith and Jesper Bratt said at the conclusion of practice? What do you think of Timo Meier? Do you think the Devils should continue to give him chances, or is it time for him to get benched or maybe be a healthy scratch? And then let me know what you think about the Devils defense in general. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening once again.